You think rent is just about money? That night, standing in front of my landlady's door with nothing in my pocket, I learned some debts are paid with something far deeper and far more dangerous to the heart. I still remember how heavy that night felt. Rent was due and I was short, completely short. The envelope I usually slipped under her door was empty, and my pride was even lighter. For hours, I paced inside my small apartment, debating whether to avoid her, to lie, or to simply vanish until I had enough to pay. But my landlady wasn't the kind of woman you avoided. She had this way of appearing calm and composed, yet her presence carried weight, like she already knew everything before you said a word. When the clock struck midnight, the silence pressed down on me harder. That's when I heard the soft but deliberate knock on my door. Not rushed, not impatient, just steady. My chest tightened. She knew. She always knew. I opened the door and there she was. My landlady. Her hair was tied back loosely, strands framing her face, and her eyes held that quiet authority that made me feel both nervous and oddly safe. She didn't storm in with demands or accusations. Instead, she leaned lightly against the doorframe, arms crossed, and said in a voice that was calm but unshakable, "You're late on rent." The words stung, not because she said them harshly, but because she said them so matter-of-factly. There was no anger in her tone, only expectation. It reminded me of how much she carried herself differently from everyone else I knew. Calm, firm, but never cruel. I stammered through my excuse, words fumbling out of me about hours cut at work, unexpected bills, and promises I wasn't sure I could keep. She didn't interrupt. She just watched me, her gaze steady, her lips pressed together, her silence more powerful than any lecture. It made me shift from foot to foot, hands clammy, heat rising in my face. Finally, she stepped closer. Not intimidating, but close enough that I could smell her perfume. A faint, warm scent of sandalwood and something floral that softened the edge of the moment. Her hand brushed the doorframe beside me, fingers tapping lightly. Then she spoke, almost gently. "Money isn't the only form of payment." The room felt smaller then, her presence filling the space. My breath caught, and in that pause, something shifted between us. The rent I owed wasn't just about numbers anymore. I realized she wasn't talking about pity, and she wasn't letting me off the hook. She was offering something else, something more personal, something that had nothing to do with contracts or receipts. In that instant, I didn't know whether to step back or step closer. But what I did know was this. The night wasn't going to end with just a transaction. Her eyes lingered on mine, waiting, as though she wanted to see if I could understand without her saying another word. And deep down, I did. The moment she spoke, the air in the room seemed to thicken. Money isn't the only form of payment. Her words hung there, quiet but heavy, as if they carried more than one meaning, as if she had carefully chosen them knowing they would unsettle me. I stood frozen in the doorway, my pulse racing, unsure whether to laugh it off or ask what she truly meant. But her expression wasn't playful, nor was it stern. It was something else, something unreadable. Her lips curved just slightly, not quite a smile, but enough to make me wonder if she enjoyed watching me struggle to find a response. My throat tightened. I don't want you to think I'm trying to take advantage," I stammered, the words tumbling out clumsily. "I'll find a way to pay." Her eyes softened just a little, though her gaze never wavered. She stepped past me and into the apartment, uninvited but welcome in a way that unsettled me. She moved with the same confidence she always had, her heels clicking softly against the floor until she stood in the center of the small living room. It wasn't just that she owned the building. It was the way she carried herself, like every space bent naturally to her presence. I closed the door behind her, my hands still trembling. The room was silent, except for the faint hum of the refrigerator and the distant sound of the city beyond the window. She lowered her arms and let her fingers brush against the edge of the couch, her touch casual but deliberate. Then she looked at me again, tilting her head slightly, her voice quieter this time. "You're honest. I can see that. And honesty is worth more than money." Her words struck deeper than I expected. All this time, I had assumed she only cared about rent being on time, about numbers and contracts. But here she was, standing in my living room at midnight, telling me something I couldn't quite decipher. My heart beat faster, not just from fear of eviction, but from the unspoken tension threading between us. I took a slow step toward her, unsure why, only knowing I couldn't stand frozen by the door any longer. "So, what happens now?" I asked, my voice lower, steadier, though my insides were still tangled. Her lips parted, and for a moment I thought she might answer directly. Instead, she let the silence linger, her eyes searching mine as though she wanted me to fill in the meaning myself. Then, with the smallest of movements, she reached out, her fingertips grazing the back of my hand. The touch was feather-light, almost accidental, yet it sent a quiet electricity up my arm. The silence between us deepened. It wasn't empty. It was full, charged, a silence that held more weight than words. She didn't need to explain herself. She was giving me a choice, one I wasn't sure I was ready for, but one I couldn't walk away from either. And in that stillness, with her hand lingering near mine, I realized some debts could never be measured in money. The silence stretched between us, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It was thick with possibility, heavy with things neither of us dared to say. Her fingers lingered near mine, barely brushing, just enough to awaken every nerve in my hand. It was such a simple gesture, yet it felt like the ground beneath me shifted. I wanted to pull away, to retreat into the safety of distance, but at the same time, something in me refused to let go of that warmth. Her touch was steady, intentional, and when I finally looked into her eyes, I realized she wasn't teasing. She wasn't testing me. She was telling me something. Something quiet, vulnerable, hidden beneath her calm. Her gaze softened in that moment. Up close, I noticed the faint lines at the corners of her eyes, the kind that come from years of laughing, living, and carrying responsibilities no one else could see. She had always seemed untouchable, composed, the kind of woman who could command any room she walked into. But here, now, in this tiny apartment, she felt human in a way I hadn't seen before. "You don't have to say anything," she whispered, her voice low, as though even the walls shouldn't hear. Her thumb brushed against the side of my hand, gentle, deliberate. "I just need you to be here." Those words wrapped around me like a blanket I didn't know I needed. It wasn't about rent anymore, or even about debts. This was something else entirely, connection, maybe even loneliness. The thought that someone like her could need someone like me was enough to shake me to my core. Slowly, cautiously, I let my hand turn, letting her fingers slip into mine. It wasn't a firm grip, just the soft linking of hands, but it said more than anything I could have spoken. My chest tightened, not from fear, but from a tenderness I wasn't ready for. We stood like that for what felt like forever. The world outside could have been falling apart and I wouldn't have noticed. The glow of the street lamp outside the window spilled across the room, bathing her hair in soft light, making the black strands shimmer as though they belonged to another time, another life. When she finally moved, it was only to sit down on the couch, her hand still holding mine, guiding me gently to sit beside her. She leaned back, her shoulders relaxing for the first time since she had stepped inside. "It's been a long day," she murmured, almost to herself. I sat close enough to feel the warmth radiating from her, my heartbeat matching the slow rhythm of her breath. My nerves screamed at me to keep my distance, to not cross lines that couldn't be uncrossed. But sitting there, her hand still wrapped around mine, I knew distance wasn't what either of us wanted. No rent money could buy this moment. No contract could explain it. And yet, it felt more binding than anything written on paper. The air between us felt different now, charged in a way that made even silence feel alive. Sitting side by side on that worn-out couch, her hand still resting lightly in mine, I could feel the weight of everything unsaid pressing against us. It wasn't just about late rent anymore. It hadn't been for a while. This was about something deeper, something neither of us had planned for but both of us couldn't deny. She let out a quiet sigh, her body sinking into the cushions as if she were finally allowing herself to relax. I noticed how her shoulders, so often squared with authority, drooped gently, revealing the exhaustion she usually hid. It made her seem even more human, even more fragile, and that realization stirred something protective inside me. "I'm tired of always being strong," she said suddenly, her voice breaking the silence. Her tone wasn't commanding. It was raw, almost trembling, like a confession slipping out against her will. She turned her head toward me, and for the first time, I saw the glimmer of vulnerability in her eyes. People look at me and think I have it all together, but they don't see the nights I come home and wish someone would just stay. Her words struck me with the weight of truth. I had always thought of her as untouchable, confident, independent, the kind of woman who didn't need anyone. But here she was, telling me otherwise, opening a door to a part of herself she probably never let anyone see. I swallowed hard, my heart thundering. My instinct was to reach out, to comfort, but I hesitated. What if I said the wrong thing? What if I overstepped? And yet, my silence would have been worse. So, with a deep breath, I spoke. "You don't have to be strong with me," I said softly, my thumb brushing over her hand. "I may not have much to offer, but I can stay. I want to stay." Her lips curved into the faintest smile, one that didn't quite erase the sadness in her eyes but softened it. She leaned a little closer, her shoulder brushing against mine. The warmth of that touch was more powerful than any kiss. It carried trust, hesitation, and hope all at once. "You have no idea how long I've needed to hear that," she whispered. The room seemed to shrink around us, the walls fading into the background until it was just the two of us. Two souls caught between what we were supposed to be and what we secretly longed for. Her gaze dropped to our joined hands, then slowly lifted to meet mine again. I could see the question in her eyes, the silent plea for reassurance. I nodded, barely able to find words, and she let out another sigh, this one softer, almost relieved. For a moment, we just sat there, close enough to feel each other's breaths. The quiet between us no longer heavy but tender. That night, no contracts were signed, no rent was exchanged. Instead, there was honesty. Fragile, unexpected, and far more binding than any agreement. And in her eyes, I saw the beginnings of something that terrified and comforted me all at once. The possibility of love. The hours seemed to fold in on themselves that night, time slowing to a crawl as if the world had conspired to keep us in that small living room. The lamps cast a soft glow across the walls, wrapping everything in a golden haze. Her hand was still in mine, her shoulder still brushing mine, and though it was such a small contact, it felt impossibly intimate. My pulse hammered against my ribs as though it were trying to remind me of all the reasons I should step away, yet I couldn't make myself move. She shifted slightly, her knee brushing against my leg. It was the kind of touch that might have gone unnoticed in another moment. But here, it carried the weight of everything unspoken. My breath caught in my throat. I glanced at her, and she was already looking at me. Her dark eyes held me still, and for the first time, I couldn't find a safe place to hide. "You're too young for this," she said softly, almost as if she was trying to convince herself more than me. Her lips curved into a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes, and she shook her head. People would never understand. Her words stung, not because they were cruel but because they were true. The world outside those walls would see something wrong where I felt only right. Still, the ache in her voice told me she wanted what she was denying herself. "I don't care what they think," I whispered back, my voice steadier than I expected. "This, whatever this is, it matters to me." Her gaze softened, her resolve breaking for just a second. Slowly, almost hesitantly, she reached up to brush a strand of hair from my forehead. Her fingers lingered there, grazing my temple, tracing down toward my cheek. My skin burned under her touch, and I closed my eyes for a moment, letting the sensation ground me. When I opened them again, she was closer, so close I could feel her breath against my face. Every fiber of me screamed to close that last inch, to bridge the distance that had been narrowing all night. My heart thundered, my hands trembling as I tightened my hold on hers. But then, she pulled back, her expression torn between longing and restraint. Her hand slipped away, resting instead against her lap. She looked down, her lips pressed tightly together, fighting words she didn't want to say. "I can't," she whispered, her voice fragile, breaking at the edges. "Not yet." The air hung heavy with everything unfinished. The distance she created felt wider than the room itself, yet her closeness still lingered in every breath I took. My chest ached, not with rejection, but with the ache of nearly crossing into something we both wanted but were too afraid to claim. Still, as her eyes flicked back to mine, I saw it clearly. This wasn't the end of our story. It was only the pause before the next step. And that pause, thick with longing and restraint, was almost more intimate than if we had kissed. The quiet between us after her whispered, "Not yet," felt like a wall, thin enough to see through but thick enough to stop me in place. I sat there, my heart pounding, my hands still tingling where her fingers had been. She looked away, her dark hair falling like a curtain across her cheek, but I could see the conflict written in every line of her face. I wanted to respect her distance, to give her the space she clearly needed. But at the same time, I couldn't shake the feeling that if I let the moment slip away entirely, I would regret it forever. So I stayed still, not pressing, not demanding, just waiting. Minutes passed like hours. Then, almost imperceptibly, her posture softened. She leaned back against the couch, letting out a breath she'd been holding too long. "You make it so hard to resist," she murmured, her voice so low I barely caught it. I turned to face her, my chest tightening. She wasn't smiling, not teasing. Her words were a confession. She had drawn the line, but she was already stepping past it. This time it was her who reached out. Her fingers brushed against mine again, hesitant at first, then firmer, as if she needed the anchor. I laced my hand with hers, and when she didn't pull away, something in me eased. She looked up, and for the first time that night she didn't hide. The vulnerability in her gaze was raw, unshielded, an unspoken yes. Slowly, she shifted closer. Her thigh pressed gently against mine, her shoulder leaning into me. The warmth of her body seeped into me, and I felt myself trembling, not from fear but from the intensity of finally being this close. Her hand left mine, sliding up my arm, pausing at my shoulder. Her touch was steady, deliberate. I could feel her breath on my skin, the faint scent of her perfume lingering in the air between us. My pulse hammered, every nerve on fire, every thought drowned out by the quiet urgency of her nearness. "Tell me this isn't a mistake," she whispered, her lips only inches from mine. I swallowed hard, my voice low, certain. "It's not. Not to me." That was all it took. She closed the space, not with a kiss, but by resting her forehead lightly against mine. The intimacy of that touch, her skin against mine, her breath mingling with mine, was almost overwhelming in its tenderness. My eyes shut instinctively, the moment searing itself into me like something sacred. Her hand cupped the side of my face, her thumb tracing gently along my jaw. "Then I'll stop fighting it," she whispered, her voice breaking with both fear and relief. The barrier between us was gone. What remained was fragile, trembling, but real. That night, no walls, no excuses, no hesitations stood in our way anymore. The boundary she had tried to keep was shattered, not recklessly, but with the quiet certainty that what we were stepping into was worth every risk. The night had deepened into stillness. The outside world seemed far away. No footsteps in the hallway, no distant traffic, only the soft hum of the refrigerator and the steady rhythm of our breathing. Her forehead still rested gently against mine, her hand cupping my cheek. In that fragile closeness, I felt something I hadn't expected to find in her presence. Peace. She pulled back just enough to look at me, her eyes searching mine as though weighing the truth of what we had just admitted without words. There was fear there, fear of what others would say, fear of the lines we had crossed. But beneath it was something stronger. Longing, relief, hope. "I never planned for this," she whispered, her voice trembling. "You were supposed to be just someone renting a room, someone passing through. Her thumb brushed lightly against my skin, a tender gesture that contradicted the distance her words tried to create. But you've become more than that. Too much more. Her honesty unraveled me. I wanted to reassure her, to promise her that she wasn't alone in this, that I had been caught in the same unexpected tide. My chest tightened, words pressing against my throat until they finally broke free. "You're not just my landlady," I said quietly. "You're the person I think about when the day ends. The one I don't want to walk away from." Her lips parted slightly, as though my words both startled and soothed her. She let out a shaky laugh, half relief, half disbelief. "You shouldn't say things like that. It makes it harder to let you go." "Then don't let me go," I answered, my hand covering hers. The sincerity in my voice surprised even me. It wasn't desperation, it was certainty. Her eyes glistened with unshed tears, but instead of pulling away, she leaned into me, resting her head against my chest. The weight of her, the warmth of her was grounding. My arms wrapped around her naturally, protectively, holding her as though I could shield her from every judgment, every doubt. She fit against me as though she had always belonged there, and for a long while we stayed like that, two people finding quiet shelter in each other. "You're too young to be carrying me like this," she murmured against my shirt, but her voice was softer now, almost playful. I smiled into her hair, my hand smoothing over it gently, as if to tell her without words that age meant nothing compared to the truth of how we felt. At last, she pulled back, her face inches from mine again. No hesitation this time, no walls. She pressed a soft kiss against my cheek, lingering just long enough to make my heart race. "If this is wrong," she said quietly, "then I don't want to be right." That was the choice. Not spoken in grand declarations, not written on paper, but sealed in the quiet warmth of her arms and the trust in her gaze. That night, we stopped being landlady and tenant. We stopped being defined by rules and expectations. We simply became two souls who chose each other, despite everything. Speech balloon, if this story touched you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more heartfelt age gap romance stories. Your support helps bring these moments to life. And tell me in the comments, would you take the same risk for love?